I met one of my favorite bodybuilders, professional bodybuilders. He was a guest poser at a bodybuilding show that I went to, and was really just kind of blessed and honored to be able to get some one-on-one time with him, have a conversation with him. And he just pulled me aside and he was like, dude, you don't want this life. I'm not going to name drop him because I don't have permission to share this conversation, but he was like, look, dude, I got to take drugs to wake up. I got to take drugs to get through the day. I got to take drugs to go to bed. He goes, dude, this career path will wreck your life.
The agents that are listening to this right now, maybe they have a team, maybe they want to start a team, maybe they have a small team or large team. What kind of advice would you give them? Like, what kind of team do I want? Because not everybody wants to think as big as Joshua Smith.
Yeah, and this is where, like I was talking about earlier with clarity, okay, the way that I look at this is you got to know the mountain is that you're going to climb, right? So like, what do you want out of this thing?
And welcome to the Iconic Agent Living Podcast, where we dive deep into the stories, strategies, mindset, and leadership behind some of the most iconic people in the real estate industry. I'm your host, Jen Marie, and today I am so incredibly honored to introduce our guest, Joshua Smith. Now, if you have not heard from him, Joshua Smith got his real estate license in 2005, started his real estate team in 2006, and since sold over 7,000 homes. He was named the 30th top realtor in the U.S. by the Wall Street Journal, was an NAR 30 under 30 finalist, has coached and mentored over 5,000 real estate agents, and today leads a real estate organization of over 650 real estate agents. And when he's not building businesses, coaching agents, or leading at a high level, Josh enjoys health and fitness, family time, and snowboarding. Not only is Josh one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the real estate industry, but he's also somebody I am proud to call my friend. His impact on agents, leaders, businesses across the country is truly remarkable. So Josh, welcome to the show. I'm so excited.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for this and honored to be here with you.
Awesome. So, hey, let's just dive deep. So let's start from the beginning. Now, you were born. So Tell me about that story. Like, how were you as a kid? Were you ambitious? Were you always having big dreams?
Yeah, I mean, not in a way. Yeah, I would say, yeah. I mean, it was, I moved around a lot as a kid, so I was always kind of a loner. And an example, I went to a different school every year of my life until I started high school. So my parents just bounced around a lot. I get asked all the time, like, were your parents in the military? Nope, they just like to move a lot. Right? But yeah, I got into working out, started wrestling, got into working out, and then I thought bodybuilding was going to be my thing. Like junior high, high school, I always had big dreams of becoming a professional bodybuilder and, going that path. And then when I was 18 years old, so I started going down that path, competing in bodybuilding shows in high school and whatnot. And I met one of my favorite bodybuilders, professional bodybuilders. He was a guest poser at a bodybuilding show that I went to, and was really just kind of blessed and honored to be able to get some one-on-one time with him, have a conversation with him. And he just pulled me aside and he was like, dude, you don't want this life. I'm not going to name drop him because I don't have permission to share this conversation, but he was like, look, dude, I got to take drugs to wake up. I got to take drugs to get through the day. I got to take drugs to go to bed. He goes, dude, this career path will wreck your life. Go do something different. And it just sat with me. And I've never been like the smartest dude, but one thing I've always done right is pick the right people to listen to and just listen to their advice, not question it. But then I got really lost, man. Like I didn't know that, this whole dream that I always had as a kid growing up and, high school growing up, whatever. Then I was like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? And I attempted the whole college thing, dropped out of college. That wasn't the path I wanted to do. So I got lost for some time, pretty depressed where I just wasn't doing shit with my life. But that led me to some low moments, some bad depression, and which ultimately led me into real estate, because I got extremely depressed. And I went from being in great shape and, to next thing you know, I'm almost 300 pounds, morbidly obese, was eating 2 chicken breasts and broccoli that turned into 2 double Whoppers from Burger King and, being drunk every day by noon. And, for me, like when I don't have a purpose, man, I need a purpose, right? But then, like I said, I got extremely depressed, kind of got to my darkest moments, and I was like, hey man, I don't want this path, but I was serious about turning things around. I'm like, okay, what's the opposite of depression? It's fulfillment. I'm like, what would make me fulfilled? And I was like, I don't know. Again, I was lost. But then I identified, okay, if I don't know what I want, let me identify areas of my life that I'm unhappy with, that if I can solve these, I think would put me on the right path. So I'm like, okay, I want to get back into shape again. I was just disgusted with myself, and that I let myself get that, that out of shape. So I went on my 100 pound plus weight loss journey. But then I was like, okay, I'm also sick and tired of being broke. I've never made more than $10 an hour in my life at that point. I'm like, sick and tired of getting broke. So what are those options? And that led me into real estate. I mean, the sales, a year later, jumped into real estate. So that path, led me here. But then once I jumped into real estate, that fire got lit hard again.
So yeah, it sounds like you have an addictive personality, but you've just shifted it all into healthy habits, working out and getting very clear. You said you weren't the smartest person, and I really challenged that one, but I love how you say it's like, being surrounded by, smart people. With that, like, so did you hear about the real estate industry? Did you know somebody in what actually, how did you pick real estate?
So when I decided to turn my financial situation around, I decided to jump into health club sales. Because my dad owned gyms for 30 years when I was a kid growing up. So I started selling memberships for my dad as a kid. I knew that industry. So I decided to jump into that. So I just moved from Michigan to Phoenix, Arizona in 2004, started off selling memberships, became a sales manager for a local gym out here. But, quickly realized that the only path to a good financial future would be to be in ownership. Like I can't be an employee. I gotta be in ownership. And I kind of innately knew that before I took that job. But dude, getting in the health and fitness industry is very expensive. It cost me close to $1 million to launch my own facility. But dude, this was 2000, 2004, 2005. Lots of members, that were real estate agents at the gym that were all rolling up in their Escalades and their Hummers and their, whatever. And I was just looking at, okay, what's a vehicle that I can jump into that's a low barrier to entry, because I wasn't willing to go back to college, or but that I also could afford to jump into. And just looking at it, did a little bit of due diligence. When I said that, had a few conversations with a few people that I kind of trusted at that time that I knew, and I was like, okay, I think I can do this, man. Like, I love people, I love sales, I'm a workhorse. Like, it's a virtue, but for me, it's been as much of a vice, right? Because I'm a guy that, dude, like, I love 16, 18-hour work days, right? Which isn't a good, healthy thing necessarily either, but I just saw this as, hey, man, I got $1,000 to my name. Okay, I can make that happen with real estate. 6-week quick kind of crash course, with the classes. And what I love about real estate is you get to jump in, you're selling other people's product. So the cost to get involved, versus like if we were going to go open up a Jimmy John's franchise, or, I've had businesses where I've been 6 and 7 figures deep into just startup costs before we even have a product to bring to market. With real estate, it's like, what a courses cost. I don't know what they cost nowadays, but $500, so like $1,000 between joining the board, all your fees, like you're licensed, you're selling other people's products, you're making good money. And I've never seen an industry where you can go from zero to hero. You can go from being broke, never making more than $10 an hour, to making more than attorneys and doctors within 6 months. Like I was able to do at the age of 23, if you're committed.
No, I love that. So let's go back to, you were drinking, you had a lot of unhealthy habits. You got very clear with yourself, like where you wanted to be personally, professionally. But like, if you're going from that, like going from extremely unhealthy to healthy, how did you implement those habits so that you were able to, like, how did you find that discipline?
Yeah. So the drinking, I became sober 6 years ago, right? So I lost 100 pounds and got into, good shape again, still drinking. But I knew the tricks of the trade. I knew the tools, because again, I grew up in that industry. I was a personal trainer. I just was like, all right, in calories out, make sure my protein macros are where they need to be. When I drink, I just calculated my macros, and, not advising that for anybody. For me, I guess you could say I was a very functional alcoholic. I've never been like a big, like, go out nightclub. I've always, like I said earlier, I'm very introverted, right? I've always been a little bit of a loner. So I'm more of the guy that would just start drinking at noon, getting work done, drinking by myself. Or in real estate, it's so alcohol friendly.
Yeah,
Like every
totally.
event, everywhere you go to, it's almost harder, I think, to not drink than it is to drink,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
But when it comes to that question, right? So I don't rely on willpower for anything. I look at this of, look, I wouldn't allow myself to get up to 300 pounds mortally obese, wouldn't have become, an alcoholic, wouldn't have, developed, like I've had a bad Adderall addiction. That was probably the hardest one I had to overcome. Like I wouldn't have allowed myself to develop these addictions or those, like if I had innate crazy amounts of willpower, like those wouldn't happen in the first place. So I go at this from the understanding that, hey, I understand that I'm a weak human being, kind of no different than anybody else. So I don't rely on willpower. I rely on systems. Yeah, right. And when I look at like the word discipline, because you can be extremely disciplined without having any willpower. Like let's just define what the word discipline means. It means being a disciple to a plan. Well, what is a disciple? Disciple is a committed, loyal follower. So all I have to do is become a committed, loyal follower to a plan. So what I've found and kind of my framework that I've discovered over the years with this is, okay, let me get extreme clarity on what I want, why I want it, why it's important to me. And clarity is power. Like you got to have extreme clarity because until you get to the point where the pain of not accomplishing the thing is more painful than the status quo, like as human beings, we won't take action. So got to get extreme clarity again, what you want, why you want it, why it's important to you. Then from there, understand where you're at, where it is that you want to go, then reverse engineer and identify the best proven plan to get you from where you're at to where you want to go. But then now, okay, now I have the plan that I need to be a committed, loyal follower to, a disciple to, right? To get me from where I'm at to what it is I truly know that I want. And again, truly know that you want. It's not something that we're full of shit about, not a nice to have. It's a great Tony Robbins says, we don't achieve the nice to haves in life. So we accomplish our musts. So that, that end point needs to become a must, a non-negotiable must, for you. Then from there, I rely on systems or environment and systems. So like as an example, when I made the commitment to getting sober, right? I was like, okay, I'm going to battle this demon. I knew it was going to be a rough road. So, okay, but I was very clear on why I needed to get sober, right? Why I needed to kind of go to battle with that demon, overcome that bad habit. So I had the clarity piece, but then from there it was like, okay, I had to get very, this was just me white, piece of paper and mapping this out. But I'm like, okay, how do I need to rig my environment to win? How do I make it as easy as possible to succeed, difficult as possible to lose? So I'm like, okay, number one, no alcohol in the house. And that was easy because my wife hated my drinking habits too. So she doesn't have an issue with drinking. She doesn't need to not drink, but I did. So I'm like, hey, until I can get control of this, like you can't have any alcohol in the house. But then I knew that, okay, well, what are other situations that I'd put myself in where I know it'd be too weak of a human being to say no, right? So it's like, okay, I can't go out to eat anywhere that serves alcohol. I can't go to any functions, family barbecues, get-togethers. And then from there, it elicits help, right? Like having a call, like good friends or family members, hey, I'm not going to show up to your birthday party or your celebration event, not because I don't want to celebrate with you, but here's what I got going on. I don't want you to not be able to celebrate your time because I'm the one with the issue. You don't need to cater to me. I mean, I can go meet up with them separately to celebrate that with them but again, I'm just a big believer in rigging your environment to make it as easy as possible to win and as difficult as possible to lose, and just eliminate any of those temptations. And then I don't need to rely on willpower. Because then eventually, now you get it down, it becomes habitual. Now I don't need willpower for it.
No, totally. I love what you said. And I know it's like, I appreciate your vulnerability. And, I totally relate as, I'm 8 years sober and I was very high functioning like you. But, when I finally had to have that dark moment, I couldn't just do it for myself. Just like you, I had to have that purpose, which was not only like for my family, but also like, sharing with what we went through, I can help so many other people. And I don't think if that second part of it was there, that I would be like where I'm here. So like with you, like your purpose, did you see yourself as being able to help so many more people because of your experience?
No, I didn't, honestly. It wasn't a thing of, oh, I'm going to be this example because like, look, dude, I did a good job at hiding it, you know, y- it's like, okay, on the social media, it was like, like they see the life that you're portraying, like very few other than people really close to me knew I had an issue, so no, for me, it wasn't like I knew I needed to do it for myself and for my kids, my wife, it wasn't just about me. And honestly, like I had no idea it was going to impact others, until it took me about a year. of being fully sober that I decided to start talking about it publicly. And it's crazy because it's like most of my, kind of training or message out there is real estate related, but I get equally, if not more, messages, about inspire people and help them with whether it is overcoming alcoholism or going on their, health and fitness journey, or like I said, been addicted to other substances too. Which has been really, really kind of awesome to see, but it definitely wasn't part of my plan. It was just like, dude, I need to, because I was just going down destructive ways. Like every bad decision I ever made in my life had alcohol involved, and I knew that this wasn't going to end up well for me and my family if I didn't figure something out. So initially, no, it was just for me and my family, but then that was kind of a awesome, not planned, but surprising result, impact of it.
Yeah, I love there's a quote by Napoleon Hill. It's like, what is your biggest disadvantage? There's always an equal or greater advantage. So for every curse, there's a blessing. So it's really cool that you saw your people reach out to you didn't even expect. And crazy, so much more on, you say more on health than on real estate.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't track it, so I guess I don't know for sure. It seems I get more, is at least the people that reach out to me. Yeah, right. Like with emails or that will text me privately or whatever of inspired and help them in that way. I mean, I had a dude one time, I didn't know what I was looking at first, but I got a text message with an image and it was of a toilet. And there's I'm like, what's in that toilet? And it was just pills, like hundreds of pills. And this dude was addicted to a lot of, pain pills, Percocets, different things. And he started kind of following my journey, following the podcast, and, decided to take all his bags, dump them out, and flush them. Right?
It's amazing.
And it was something I've never met the guy, don't know him. Right? But yeah, it's it's kind of a cool part of the process to know that. And again, I did it for a very selfish reason for me and my family. But it's kind of cool to say, and this is where, for the longest time, I was very scared to share my journey, like whether it be finances, because I'm an idiot I've gotten better, but for the longest time, worst idiot with money, make it, lose it, debt, just stupid stuff. But then I was always embarrassed about this stuff. Didn't want to share it publicly because of the embarrassment. And maybe it's more of embarrassment, whatever. But then one day and this is, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so with, this was before the alcohol, but this was with finances and, depression. I was always very ashamed to talk about depression and, my suicidal thoughts and low moments there. But one day I just kind of woke up. I just got sick of being a charlatan. I would never make claims, that were not true, but just not talking publicly about this stuff. I felt like the life that everybody had an assumption of was different than reality. To me, it just felt fake. And I was like, I just got fed up of not being authentic and not talking about it. And I was scared, right? I was like, what judgments are people going to, what are they going to have? But I'm glad that I made that decision to get really vulnerable and, talk about a lot of those deep, dark, nasty moments. One, just for my own self of just having that release and not having that, shame or that just like, hey, dude, this is what I've been through. But then to see the, others it's impacted, because even if it just impacts one person, I mean, that's pretty damn awesome.
Yeah, who also impacts another person, who can impact another person. So I love that you say you got past the embarrassment. I know, because I used to be like this. I cared so much what other people thought, and I was embarrassed to share what was really going on. But I read about the longest science study on people on their deathbeds, interviewing them about their life. They said the biggest regret they would have is that they wish they wouldn't have worried about what other people thought of them. So, it's a total shift when you are able to let that go. But I do know it has a lot of fear in there. So we all have fear, unless you're what is that Alex guy that climbs free solo? But how do you push past that fear?
I don't know. I mean, if it's an isolated incident, I can speak to it, right? But I think the first step is, to have awareness of it, and then to really just logically think through it. Let's just use cold calling as an example. Okay, so you've got this fear of cold calling because of this fear of being rejected. So then if I just think about this, right, if I start logically thinking about it, because that used to be me, right, I had massive call reluctance. And then my mentor, Darren Hardy, shared with me this Newsweek study that was done that was about the average funeral in the United States. And he's like, okay, look, in this Newsweek study that was done, they went out there and just, I don't know, attended and did all this research, collected all this data on all these funerals throughout the United States. And it was discovered that 100 people show up to the average funeral. And that's if the weather's good. If it's raining, whatever, you got about 50% that show up. But then from there, of the average funeral, only 6 people actually cry and shed a tear. And what, dude, that just hit me, man. I started analyzing this. I'm like, okay, why do I need to do these calls? Okay, to provide opportunities, food on the table, provide opportunities for my loved ones. Yeah, right. Okay, so I am not taking the action that I need to take for the the 6 people that I like. The 6 people that would show up to my funeral, that would be devastated, that would shed a tear. I am not taking the necessary actions that I should be taking for me and for them, because I'm worried about the opinion of some stranger that will never, if I got hit by a car today, whatever, that would never be bothered to show up at my funeral, that could give 2 shits about me or my family. Like, I am allowing my actions to be dictated on these strangers, through this piece of plastic that, again, could care less about me, could care less about my family, could care less if we starve, not because they're bad human beings, but because they got their own problems. So I'm letting the opinion of this human being that I'll never probably meet, dictate my actions, that then is making those suffer that actually do matter. So when you start really breaking it down, like, why do I need to take this action? But then, okay, why am I not taking it? And as you're logically thinking through it, then from there you realize, okay, those fears that you had in your head for that inaction are pretty damn silly.
I know. Actually, I don't know. That's crazy, because I, since I was a kid, I was always like wonder like what I would be like when I got old, and then like who would be at my funeral. I went to my grandma's funeral. I'm like, how is my funeral going to be? That's actually a stoic exercise to see that, because you can envision, like, what do you want to leave in the world? Like, how would they describe you? Who would show up? And I hope more than 6 people cry on my funeral. So yeah, okay. So let's talk about your first year. 2005, I was there with you. It was amazing. But we all know what happened next. So what did the first year start with you? You were a huge REO agent. Tell us about that.
So the first couple years, because I got in 2005 and hit the ground running. Now, the first thing that I did, though, was kind of like I said earlier on, I understand what my limitations are, and I always seek expert advice. So I'm like, all right, dude, never ran a business before. I'm 23 years old, always been a W-2 employee, I need a mentor. And so I sought out the biggest badass I possibly could find. Him, Nate Martinez.
Oh, yeah.
And so, went immediately worked for him, but at his brokerage, not his team. But, because I knew I wanted to create a business, so I knew I was going to have to create a team. Luckily, not only is he a top team leader and a top realtor, but he owned the brokerage. So I'm like, okay, pretty confident this guy can guide me. So I had him just lay out the blueprint. Yeah, right. But I was, willing to take the action. So, I hit the comparison. You've got to be careful with comparison. Anybody that's watching or listening to this, understand I was 23 years old, wasn't married, didn't have kids. I could work 70 hours, 7 days a week, work 80, 100 hours a week, and I did. But just executed like crazy, had the roadmap. All I had to ask was if he said, jump, it was just, well, how high and how much, right? So I had the blueprint and the roadmap. Did 40 deals my first year, all through open houses. I was doing 7 to 10 open houses. Yep. Also, yep. 7 to 10 open houses a week, stacking as many as I possibly could. Then going into my second year, I wanted to double going into my second year because my whole goal was to close a deal a week. So I felt, fell 4 deals short of my target, my goal, but, came decently close to hitting it. But then I was like, well, I want to double going into my second year. Well, I knew that I'm assessing this, analyzing this, I'm like, not enough hours in a day. And if you remember back then, dude, we didn't have scanners, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have DocuSign, shit just took a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this, I'm like, I think it's a mathematical impossibility with me being a one-man show. So I hired my first assistant to take 40 hours a week of essential non-money making activities off my plate so I could allocate all my time to money making activities. But then from there I was looking at and just doing a SWOT analysis on my business, and I was like, okay, the threat that I have is because I was doing open houses, every one of my transaction was buy side. I had to spend so much time begging other real estate agents to let me hold their listings open. I'm like, hey, my vulnerability that can block this is the fact I don't have my own listings. So then that's when I incorporated expireds, just started hammering expireds like crazy, going into 2026. Because I'm like, hey, if I can always carry at least 20 listings, and this might sound bad, but I didn't even care about the revenue from the listings. I just wanted my own storefronts for the open houses because I was just crushing it with open houses. And but I got really good at expireds, open houses. That then brought me to 103 deals my next year. And then from there, what started happening going into 2020 or 2007 was, okay, I'm hammering these expireds. Well, the reason that these weren't selling wasn't because the home seller was being unrealistic, because they weren't willing to lower the price. It was because they couldn't, because now they're underwater. So then, that then led me into, okay, what are options here? And luckily, I had Nate and had Frank Russo and dudes that had experience, been doing this for decades prior to me, that had been through short sales and REOs. And, so they kind of were able to guide me a little bit, or at least point me in the right direction of what to do there. So started, hammering short sales really hard in early 2007. And then, by the end of 2007, going into 2008, that's where I just started seeing the trend of REO really picking up, because I'm always I always look at this as, okay, there's no such thing as a good market or a bad market. The real estate market's always good for somebody. As a real estate professional, it's my job to identify whom it's good for, pivot, shift, and adapt accordingly. And what I mean by whom it's good for is who's buying, who's selling, why they're buying, why they're selling, where they're coming from, where they're going. So I'm always analyzing the market, like what are the trends that we're seeing. So now we're starting to see these, REOs increase, right? Foreclosures increase. And that was a challenge because my broker owners were also big REO agents, and REO accounts were owned by the brokerage, right? So I'm kind of in direct competition with my mentors, and, which all worked out good. We all were able to get our own REO accounts, but there was, it wasn't like I was going to be given an REO account, because they needed that for, to run their own businesses and feed their own families. But yeah, I got myself positioned with, I think at the peak, we had about 35 different banks and outsourcers that we were running business for. And as you know, in our market, because you and I are in the same market, dude, if you weren't heavy into short sale and REO, you were pretty much destroyed. But the blessing was, I pivoted at the right time. So by the time Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns collapses, and I was already positioned so well, we were able to navigate extremely well during the great financial crisis.
No, I love that. I so wish I was you, because I was there heavily invested and, doing so great. And then until 08 came, and I did get into REO and short sale, but it was the end of 08. So I was already 9 months late to the game. So I did it okay, but if I would have known you back then, if I would have had a better circle, a mentor, I could have been like you, really take that market share. And I also really love how you say, there's no good market or bad market, because we know what happened in June of 22, the interest rates go up. Whether you're a team leader, whether you're a solo agent, you had to pivot and pivot fast. So I like to say we're all new agents in this market. So I would love to talk to you about leverage in humans, because, a lot of agents that are on this listening to us right now, maybe they've tried to order an assistant. Order an assistant. Hire an assistant, or they where do they start? And I know when I was super busy and hired my first assistant, I was like, how do I have time to train them? So how did you launch that to get your assistant up and running so you can go do your job?
Yeah, so might be more effective if I go through what I do now, what I've learned now, because I wasn't good at it in the beginning. I could show with what I did in the beginning, but you don't want to do what I did. Now, my first assistant, I got lucky. Well, you can say luck. She was my assistant escrow officer that worked for my escrow officer at the title company. And when I was looking ready for my first admin, I was like, okay, who would be a great fit for this? And I kept going back, I need an Ashley, I need an Ashley, I need an Ashley, but I had a year's worth of working experience with her. And so then I'm like, why don't I just poach Ashley? If my escrow company gets pissed at me, well, fuck them. There's a bazillion others. And so I poached her, man. But I already knew that, because we had a year. I worked more with her side by side than I actually did the EO. And and she was in the same office building. So they had the back half of our suite for the title company. But then I hired a lot of bad assistants because I didn't know. It's interesting. We spend so much time, or at least I did. I spent so much time mastering new client acquisition, mastering listing presentations, buyer presentations, and getting so good at those damn things. But then when I started growing and expanding, and the most important thing then became people, I didn't put the same mastery into mastering my ability to identify and, kind of train up talent. It took me a decade to learn that, right? And open my eyes to that. So when I look at this, if I look at the overall game, let's just call it a real estate entrepreneur, right? So it is a strategy. skill set, process, system, leverage game, and in that order. So strategy is just our overall effective plan. And so what is your overall effective plan to get from point A to point B, right? Or point A to point Z, where you're at to where you want to go. And anything that we do more than once in our business should have a strategy applied to it. Then from there, I take that strategy, then I chunk that down to create, so let me go, so strategy, then from there, before I get into process. So then it's okay, what is this skill set that I need to dial in so then I can execute on this strategy in the most effective and efficient manner. So easy way of thinking this, we think about new client acquisition, so AK lead gen, right? Getting leads and converting leads into customers. Okay, the skill set that I need to convert a Zillow lead is different than a pay-per-click lead, different than a FSBO, different than a probate, different than an open house, different than if I'm growing my business through organic YouTube. So there's there's universal skill sets that we all need to have in place. There's ability to communicate, lead the process, hire presentation, listing presentation. But then from there, based on what the strategy is, there can be different skill sets that we need to hone in. So we have strategy, skill set, then from there processes. Then I take that strategy, I chunk it down into steps. Here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3, here's step 4, here's step 5. Those are the processes. Then I take those processes, I put them inside systems. Systems only exist for us to be able to execute on our processes the same way each and every single time, ensure things don't get missed, ensure that we can do it in the most effective and efficient manner, but then also allow me to inspect what I expect when I start plugging people in. So then the last component with leverage, okay, I'm bringing on people, right, to be able to execute on that strategy, that need those skill sets, that can follow the processes inside the systems, and I can inspect what I expect. So when I'm hiring people, I've come up with a framework that I call my 4RD model. So there's 4 R's and 1 D. So I should come up with a better name, but I like to keep things simple. So first thing I look at is, okay, what is the role that I need to hire for? And if I just look at, like when I'm looking at the overall, real estate game, when I'm analyzing, I'm like, where's the hole right now in my ship? How can I plug that hole? Always first try to plug it with a system or a process, but then eventually, like, don't have so many systems and processes, like eventually we need to add people. So I identify, okay, like where's the biggest need? Right? Where's the need to plug this to identify the right person? So that's going to be the role. Then from there, okay, based on this role, what are their responsibilities going to be in order to fulfill that role? So that's the second R. Then from there, okay, what are the requirements that this person must have to complete these responsibilities to fulfill this role? So I want to make sure that they have that right skill set. And again, this is something I learned the hard way, but that my mentor, Darren Hardy's been the longest business mentor I've ever had. He's like, look, man, you don't have the time, resources, or energy, right, to hire people that then you have to develop them into those, like, skills. Like, no, you got to hire people that are already friggin' ninjas at the thing that you're hiring them at, already good at the thing that you're hiring them at, should be better than you at that thing you're hiring them at, plug them in, when it comes to that. So I'm very, like, do they have to have the requirements to be able to fulfill on, again, these responsibilities to fulfill on that role? Then I look at the 4th R is results. What are the results? Let's just say it's a 90-day onboarding for this position. Okay, on day 91, what are the results that they must be achieving daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, for them to know that they're winning and for me to know that they're winning? So then that also allows me to develop kind of like what the metrics are, like what I need to inspect what I expect, and develop the scorecard so they know if they're What's interesting is I'll go into a lot of organizations and I'll go ask the staff members. Like when I'm asking the leader, they'll usually be able to articulate, like, okay, how do they know if this person's winning? But when I go to the people doing the staff, the team, they won't know. Like if I ask them, like, how do you know if you're winning? Like, what does that look like to you? Like, how do you know if you're winning at what you're supposed to be doing within this organization? Very rarely are they able to answer that to me. So then from there, the D, so those are the 4 R's, and then the D are the details. Like meaning, okay, can this be a VA? Does it need to be somebody in-house, W-2, outsourced, virtual, like part-time, full-time, pay scale, so those are the details of the position. Now, once I've got all this together, now I will, and this is going to sound a little funky, but I will visualize and manifest this person in my head. So I will know, because seek and you shall find. I'm going to know with extreme clarity who I want, who I need, what I want, right? So I manifest like a girl version and a guy version, and then I put them through simulations in my head. So, hey, if this takes place, okay, they're going to respond in this way, so I'll put through simulations. So once I have that clarity, it makes it so damn easy. Now that I know who I'm looking for, seek and you shall shall find. It allows me to create all my ad copy, how I need to go headhunt for this talent, for this person, how to write my ad copy, how to do all my Easter egg tests. Like I'm kind of notorious for putting in like half a dozen tests before they even know that there's a test being applied. So this way I can get 300 resumes and maybe 3 of the 300 will pass the test before they even knew that they're being tested. Then from there, I take them through a 2-step interview it's a 3-step total interview process, but step number 1 is a cultural fit. So we got to pass that first just to make sure that this is somebody that we can grow together and that, I know I want to roll with. Then once they pass that, then we go through the skill set interview. Then I go through a final test. I'm never going to hire anybody without putting them through a test. So let's just say it's an ISA. Okay, that final test is going to be, okay, hey, here's 250 leads. Here's the lead source. Here's what I need you to do within the CRM. Here's the script. You're going to sit next to me. I'm going to get my work done, but you're going to be in the same office with me for the next 8 hours. Go, right? Like I'm going to, or if it's a graphic designer or if it's a video editor, okay, I can give them a project where they have to, do this in a certain amount of time, see how good they're at with it. So I put them through some pretty extensive. I want to get to a point when I hire them, I'm not confident this is a good fit. I'm certain this is a good fit.
I love that. So I'm a lot like you. It's if you're going to, have like say a training hiring process, just having a very rigid, accountable process, because, we'll throw our like 10 agents into our new agent training and we might accept 2 or 3. But that way you're not wasting all that time on the 7 other people. And at the same time, when you start, like if you had 300 resumes, it'd be like, there's no way you could spend, calls, on 300 people or even going through resumes. That would be crazy. So I love I want to kind of go back. So you're really envisioning the role so after role comes the responsibility. So really list everything out like in your business that you should not be doing. So you're very clear on that. The requirements, so TC, need at least 2 years, whatever that is. And then results, because this is one thing I also see with agents is they don't know any of their metrics. They don't know, like even if they have assistants, like, well, what are they doing? But it's like if you don't have that clarity, there's just gonna be a lot of holes in your ship and you don't even know. So yeah, I love what you shared on that. Now, okay, let's go back. So the market's great. You're doing REOs, you're doing short sales. How did you transition when the market turned again in 2011?
So again, I'm just always assessing who's buying, who's selling, why they're buying, why they're selling, where they're coming from, where they're going, right? So I can pivot it. So at that point in time, okay, my traditional business was, 10% of my business. Let's just, call it from late 2008 to about 2011, and then REO and short sale is about 90% of my business. Well, then from there, okay, REO and short sale, they start dissipating. There's just lesser of them. Traditional is not picking up yet. So then I'm like, okay, understand transactions always happening. Okay, who's the market good for? Who's buying, who's selling? So then, and one thing that I do is I meet with all my title company partners all the time. And I'm always looking at, because they see a higher volume than we see, right, of closings. What are you seeing? Are you seeing traditional buyers and sellers pick up? Are you seeing short sales pick up? REOs pick up? Like what kind of business are you seeing? So at that time, they're like, there was, for the first time ever, really, we started seeing big private equity firms and hedge funds come in and started buying single family attached real estate. Previous to that, they bought, multi-units and commercial buildings and so started to seeing, these big investors come into our market. So then I'm like, okay, traditional business isn't going up. Short sales REO is slowing down. If I don't do something, eventually, I just refused it. I've never had a down year, right? So 21 years straight, my business is, right? So I refused to have a down year. Not because I, care about the money so much, but I care about winning. Right. So then though, I'm like, okay, how do I get in? Like, I didn't even know what a hedge fund was, right? So like, how do I get in with these hedge funds, right? So developed a relationship with Invitation Homes, because Invitation Homes out here was buying about 500 units a month. So then got to the point where we were, doing about 50 deals a month, not just with Invitation Homes, but Invitation Homes was our biggest, but with some other funds. And that was interesting, right? I'll just kind of share a story with you guys so you can see, like, when it comes to strategy, right? Like, you got to think outside the box. So I go to get in with this fund. And so they're sending me offers. The underwriters are always dealing with me. They're sending me offers, because I had all the listings, right? So they wanted, not all the listings, but I had, any given time I was carrying 400 listings, right? So I was getting a lot of offers from these guys. And I developed a relationship with one of the underwriters. And I'm like, hey man, like, what are your guys' goals? Well, we want to be buying 500 units a month. Well, where are you at? Well, we're at 200. Okay, dude, like I got a small army with my team. Like I'll get you to your goal. But I kept getting told, no, you can't get in with us. You can't get in with us. But they kept reaching out to me, right? Hey, what do you have in your pre-listings that are on the market yet? Like they just kept, I'm like, hey man, like you keep reaching out to me, but you won't you need me, but you won't let me to represent you guys. Like, what's up? And finally he was honest with me. And he goes, this particular fund was founded by, a dude that was Mormon. And I didn't know this, but he's like, you're not Mormon, you're not part of the church. Like they only do business with those that are attached to the church, And I'm like, okay, well, there's got to be another way, dude. Right? I'm not going to go, change my religion or convert, right? For business. But I'm like, there's got to be another way. So then he goes to me. He goes, hey, look, if you bring us anything that's not on the market, second it's listed on the MLS, second it's active, you cannot represent us. Our in-house team has to represent us. But if it's non-active, right, you can represent us. And I'm like, okay, even if it's not my listing, yes. So then, okay, we just started, doing everything we possibly could, reaching out to FSBO, like doing everything I possibly could to take them off market deals, essentially. But then I was like, hey man, there's, at that time, like 40,000 agents in our market. So I'm like, let me just start reaching out to all these other agents. Hey, before you list your property, send it to me, send me the photos. I will get you a cash offer. If your seller accepts it, you can have, so like, let's just say they're paying, 6% commission or whatever, right? This was back when the co-brokes were different, right? Where they'd like give 3%, whatever it was. It's all negotiable, of course. But I was like, whatever you're offering for the buyer agent co-broke, you can have half of it. So you'll make, because for me, all I'm doing is they're sending me the property, sending me the photos. I'm removing their contact information out of it. I'm sending it to the underwriter. They're sending me an offer. I'm then taking that offer, forwarding it to the listing agent, right? Once we're on agreement, boom, getting the, I could put deals together in 30 seconds, right? I could just sit there, watching TV show, just putting deals together. It was a nice little system, right? But then I started leveraging all these other agents in our market. Well, then it got to the point where, okay, like it was too much for me and my team. Like we just couldn't handle the demand that we were growing. I knew that this was a small window. So then I started going to other team leaders that I knew in the Valley that I had a great relationship with. I'm like, okay, I'm going to teach you how to do this. I'm going to get you with all my right relationships. You're going to give me a 15% override, like referral fee on every single deal. So then I started farming this out to, other teams so we could hit the quota because I knew that this was going to be short-lived. And I'm sharing that story of how do we get creative, but then don't take no for an answer. I mean, sometimes it is a no, but like, there's a lot of times where it's like, hey, there's deals and opportunities that can be had, but they're not just going to be handed to you. It's like, you got to make these opportunities. You got to think outside the box. But then, okay, we went hard on that till about end of 2012. And that's when the market started coming back. Additional started booming up. But I knew that, okay, that was going to come to an end. I knew that short sales and REO were going to come to an end. And not saying that they always existed, but it's going to come down to where it's 5% of my business, not. And I knew with short sales and REO, it's like, man, unless you're high, if you're not handling 50 to 100 of them at any given time, it's not even worth your time. It's like doing property management. If you're not going to have a lot of doors, it's like not even worth your time, right? So while that was taking place, I realized too that, hey, nobody had geo farms, nobody built up, because like all these homes turned over. So while that was taking place, I spent about 2 years. So in about 2011, I built up a 50,000 rooftop direct mail kind of geo farm. So, in Surprise, Arizona, is like anything west of Grand Avenue, anything south of Bell Road. If you were a single family detached unit every 21 days, you were receiving a mail piece from me. So by the time those dried up, my direct mail farm, geo farm, was just exploding.
Love that. So, we talked about too a while back. You were already surrounded yourself by a mentor from the start. So like what you're seeing is like, you're seeing the trends before they happen, right? Like you're not like, if we're reactive, if we like don't, stay on top of like what's happening now, we'll find out too late, we'll be caught with our pants down. So I love that. Let's go to like geo farms. Now, You also identified a strong market, right? Like how did you target Surprise? Because I know it was really booming back then. And like, how did you build up? I imagine you had a big budget. Like, how did that ramp up?
Yeah, so a couple things, right? So I learned this from the health club business. And again, I was blessed to, have a father that was in that industry for 30 years and being able to shadow my father. So in the health club industry, it is all about location. Yeah, you got to keep the facility. It's like keep the facility clean, have friendly staff, don't mess up billing. Like you got to hit those 3 points too. But then from there, it is all about location. So you got your 1 mile radius, 2 mile radius, 3 mile radius. 1 mile radius is where you want the biggest density of your ideal demographic. It's like, okay, college degree, 40-year-old, females making 100 plus grand a year, household income 100 grand plus a year with the type of facilities that we had, that was the prime demographic. So you want the deepest, density within 1 mile, a certain percentage that within 2 mile, and you wanted to have no direct competitors within a 3 mile. So knowing and understanding the importance of location, I started looking at this like right when I got into real estate. I'm like, okay, so Phoenix, Arizona, we're one of the most saturated real estate markets per capita on the planet. I just started looking at, okay, where is there big growth, but where do I have the least amount of competition? It's like in our market, like everybody wants to, at least at that time, Scottsdale, Biltmore, right? I'm like, well, I was doing the math on Surprise. I'm like, you got 52 people a day moving to Surprise, all these new build developments. Nobody has market share out there, So I just started focusing on like, okay, all the kind of suburbs that were, on the outskirts that nobody had market share. There was big growth that most of the other agents didn't want to be, right? Like I'd go to events early on in my career, agents, I meet other agents and they'd ask me, what markets do you work? And I would tell them and I get this like disgusted look, like, why do you work out there? I'm like, for the exact reason you got that dumb fucking look on your face, right? Because I'm like, there's mass opportunity, there's mass money, but I have no competition, right? And you have all these new people, because I just moved from Michigan to Arizona right when I got licensed. So or about a year before, but I didn't have a friend group. I didn't have this, like I said, I'm a loner. So, didn't have this sort of influence, didn't have family out here. So like I had to kind of build this out from scratch with strangers. I'm like, okay, you got all these people moving here from other places. They don't have anybody out here yet. So I just started build my business like Surprise, Goodyear, Guy, and then we expanded, a little bit in the East Valley and in, these areas that people didn't want to be that were up and coming. So that's how I chose the areas. Then from there, with how do I identify like an actual geo-farm subdivision on top of what I was just talking about there. Okay, I want to see a 10% year-over-year turnover rate. So if there's 1,000 rooftops, I want to see at least 100 home sales per year. So that means there's enough turnover for business to be had in there. Then from there, I want to make sure there's not more than one dominant listing agent in there. When I say dominant, I mean 20% plus market share. And in most of these, nobody had any market share. But there's one in my area called Vistancia that is an amazing community, but there's 4 agents. Between the 4 agents, they all lived in that community and they had over 80% market share in that community. So to me, it just never made business sense to even try. Like, okay, maybe I could break in, but it would take a long time, a lot of money, where I could just slide down a mile down the street to a neighborhood that has no market share where I can get in, and then within 6 months, gain market share and dominate market share in a new, different area that didn't have the same competition. So I never allowed myself, like I hear people say, oh, you should work your own subdivision. I think that's stupid, right? Like, okay, if your subdivision makes sense, but I'm not going to, like, to me, I don't have it. I like it. I like the homes there. To me, dude, it's just business, man. Like, I'm just looking at the sheer numbers, right? Does it make sense to jump in? And then from there, I started with 5,000. My whole methodology was as soon as I was getting consistently one listing taken per 2,500 mail pieces sent, that would give me the ROI that I needed to add another 5,000.
So you started with a $5,000 budget.
No, 5,000 rooftop.
Oh, $5,000 rooftops. Okay, let's break that down to budget. Some agents might have a bigger ones. Obviously, some might have smaller ones. And definitely what you point out with consistency. But if somebody had a smaller budget, to start, so how would you stack that up?
Yeah, I would do the biggest area that you can afford, but make sure that, especially in this market, because it's a little bit different today. We're in the most unaffordable time to be alive as a U.S. citizen in history, right? And things are going to get worse before they get better. So, it's going to take longer today, or does take longer today to get that ROI and start getting, you're not going to get the results that I did back then. Right. That was a unique time. That was a sweet spot where things were insanely affordable. And, so, okay, I pick what is the amount that you can invest monthly, the most that you can invest monthly, where it isn't going to hurt you. It isn't going to break the bank, but you can stick with it for 2 full years without getting an ROI on that money. Back then for me, I never had a serious situation where I wasn't getting an ROI in 6 months. Now, I budgeted for 9 months, but I could pretty quickly get an ROI, within 6 months. But again, that was a different time.
So ROI in 6 months, and you're saying like the average is like, wait, 2 years. So what did you do differently to make that 6 months and not 2 years?
Yeah, well, and again, the 6 months thing, there are things I've found to do differently that fast forward this. But part of that was just the time that I started my geofarm. Because again, we were like back then, it was probably one of the most affordable times. Right after the GFC, we just went through this crazy deflationary recession. I mean, a home then that was 150 now or I'll just use, one that was 185. I'll just use an example, one that I know of, it was 185. Now today is, 800, right? And incomes haven't kept up with that ratio. But then from there, okay, how do we fast forward this? So what I found is, and I found that if you ever studies like the CRS certification, not that I've ever gotten the certification through NER, but I think it's Certified Residential Specialist. They went out there, they created a fictitious agent, right? So they would go interview these neighborhoods before they created this fictitious agent, started doing this direct mail campaign, and they'd interview these neighbors and say, hey, who's the dominant agent? Right? And they get a response. Then they created these fictitious agents. The whole thing was they wanted to identify what was the right frequency for mailers. So then they found that, and they tested all these different strategies. What they came up with, though, is they blasted that neighborhood, like from mailer 1 every week for 8 weeks straight, then interviewed the neighborhoods. The fictitious agent that didn't exist was the perceived dominant agent when they were interviewed and surveyed, even though they didn't exist. So I'd go blast them every single week for 8 weeks, then every 21 days. I found every 21 days to be twice as effective as every 3 weeks, every 30 days, but no more effective than every 2 weeks. And when I started really getting crazy with frequency on is, I started doing a lot of radio and TV, and it was a mistake. I mean, I made some okay money at it, but it was the least amount of ROI that I ever did. At that time, like Russell Shaw and all these big names were on there. So I was like, all right, Curtis Johnson. So like, okay, I'll jump in the game. Right? But what I quickly realized was, so I was like on KTA, it was a KTAR 550, like where Rush Limbaugh and Sean, like used to be in Sean Hannity and, but I'm like, dude, I'm just trading money here. Like I'm putting $1 in, getting $1 out. I'm like, this isn't smart marketing, for me. So then I started dealing with, my marketing rep at the radio company. I'm like, dude, like either I got to drop this or we got to figure out how you either got to give me a big discount, like this equation isn't making sense. So we started playing with frequency. So what we discovered then is if I went Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, took off Friday and Saturday, and then we started playing with, show times too. So I was able to reduce even the days that I was on by about 30%. I got the same results as I did being on 5 days a week. It created the same perception. So then I started looking at, well, how does that impact mailer campaigns? How does that impact everything? So I found 21 days for me to be the sweet spot, and just pepper and do same piece, same branding, same messaging. You have 2 seconds from countertop to trash can. So like people want to change shit up all the time. Like how often does Coca-Cola or Apple or like the best companies that we all know that are ingrained into our head, how often do they change shit up? Like never. Yeah, right? So then from there, okay, bottom 15% is 15 to 20% is gonna be my branding. I do like just, always same colors, same everything, just so that pops so they get to, recognize that brand. But then from there, the top 85%, always have a minimum of 2 USPs and then 1 clear call to action. So would that be, your home sold guaranteed, or I'll sell it for free, or your home sold guaranteed? Like my 3 favorite call to or USPs that I ever had on the listing side is, your home sold guaranteed, or I'll buy it. Now, a lot of other agents are like, well, I can't do that, Josh. Dude, I've never bought a home. But I have great investor partners that I trust, that I rely. When I go on a listing appointment, I walk in there with cash offers. Those offers are valid through the listing period. So if any point in time we're unable to get their home sold, they can accept one of those. So this is why I don't say your home sold guaranteed or I buy it. It's your home sold guaranteed or we buy it. And so you can position yourself, to make sure that you're protected, make sure it's a win for your investors and still get paid, right? Then from there, my 1-day listing agreement, so when I started this, so you know how Russell Shaw always had the fire me guarantee,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not happy, you could fire me. And I was like, that's brilliant, right? Because if you look at NAR's surveys, at least at the time I started doing this, it was like 17 years in a straight, the biggest fear for home sellers was being stuck with a real estate agent in a long-term contract that overpromises, underdelivers. So I'm like, well, that's brilliant, man. Like, leave them in control. They're the boss. If they're unhappy anytime, they can fire me, no cost, no hassle, no obligation. So I started running that same guarantee, thinking that, he's in Scottsdale, East Valley, I'm in West Valley, it won't matter. Well, I had people start calling in my office asking for Russell Shaw. So because,
I wonder if he's listening right now.
Yeah, I'm like, I've shared the story with him, right? But yeah, Russell's not available, but I can help you, right? So then I was reaching out to my buddy Ryan Dallas. And this is one of the powers you guys will like, just get in the right rooms, combine with as many other players as you possibly can. So Ryan Dallas is a dominant agent in a small town in Illinois, but the dude's a beast. He's a boss. So I reach out to Ryan because he's so creative. And I'm like, hey, man, here's what I'm up against. He goes, oh, I got it, man. He goes, why don't you do a 1-day listing? Because it's the same damn thing, but it'll differentiate yourself. So instead of just saying fire me, just have verbiage in there that says, hey, if after 24 hours your home being listed on the MLS, as long as we don't have an accepted purchase contract, if you're unhappy for any reason, you may fire me or cancel this contract anytime without any hassle, cost, or obligation. So I became home of the 1-day listing agreement. Yeah, right. But then in there, it was like, you're 100% in control. You're the boss. If you're not happy or satisfied, you can fire me at any time. Right. That was the kind of so those were my 3 USPs. And then just a clear call to action, to call for a 100% no hassle, zero pressure listing consultation. And they just work. I call my little social.
Totally. I have the same. I have had the same. It's like it's a Craig Proctor thing of the 1 day. So interesting. You always pitch out. How many people actually canceled at the end of the day?
Nobody that I would have not allowed out anyways, because it's typically a change of situation, change of heart. To my knowledge, never had anybody that fired me because they were unhappy. Maybe it happened. Maybe they just didn't have, the heart to tell me that they're unhappy. But I've always been one like, dude, if I have a seller and they decide they don't want to sell, or I'm going to let them out anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously that client experience being really important to you. So let's shift gears on that. We've seen the market change a couple times now. Now, obviously you have run a very large team. How did you transition from, where you're at to growing the large team?
It just, like, to me, I'm just about growth. What's the next leverage opportunity? And you get to a point where, okay, you're closing, 50 homes a year, then 100 homes a year, and 100 homes a year was my capacity on my own. I didn't actually even, it got to the point, it kind of happened, because if you remember, back in like 2006, teams weren't really a thing. We didn't have podcasts, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have, so it just kind of happened, right? But I was so focused on growth and always drive me crazy if I ever miss opportunities, right? So I got to the point where I'm, 2 to 3 weeks booked out from being able to even sit down for a listing presentation or buyer consultation. I'm like, okay, they might wait 2 to 3 days, but they're not waiting 2 to 3 weeks. So I'm just pissing away money here. So at that point, that's where I started bringing on agents, only to work my overflow leads, overflow customers, but I had such an abundance of them, I knew I could keep them busy. But initially it was like, I'm going to have this Ninja SEAL small, high-producing team, and I built it. We had 7 agents, and then 7 agents, myself, and then 2 full-time support staff doing 500 units a year. Like you had to do 36 deals a year to maintain a seat on my team. I built what I was looking to build. I just had a bunch of savages, which was fun. But then again, like I talked about earlier, okay, I'm always doing SWOT analysis, assessing vulnerability. Now, I didn't anticipate this one. This one smacked me up beside the back of the head. 3 of your top agents team up, decide they want to start their own team. You realize that you just lost 30% of your business and revenue overnight. I was like, all right, once that took place, I'm like, hey man, I'm going to go so big with this thing. I had this wrong. I thought this small Ninja SEAL thing was the way to do it, but I realized there's massive vulnerabilities here. And I don't blame them for leaving. Like, I think good leaders create other leaders, and I would want my own team too. So I'm like, okay, realizing that teams are a stepping stone. So then I'm like, okay, I'm going to get so big and remove these vulnerabilities where shit, if I have 30% of my agents leave at once, it's not going to necessarily be fun, but it's not going to hurt me. Like, it's not going to sink this ship, right? So then I just started scaling it as big as I could scale it from, a team aspect and a unit count aspect, right? And then it was, well, the frustration with the team is you always lose your top talent because we know teams are a stepping stone. And I got really good at taking brand new agents fresh out of school and getting them to make 20 G's a month after splits within 6 months. But then after 2 years like clockwork, now they're doing 20, 30 million a year gross volume sales. Get that call like clockwork. Hey, Josh, appreciate everything that you've done for me. Wouldn't be where I'm at without you. But I'm ready to go on my own. Oh, but I'm staying at the brokerage. You're like, well, shit. The broker... like it is the one that's winning here, man. Like I'm the one that's recruiting men and I'm putting all this, and the broker keeps winning. I'm not winning. And I thought then the solution, at first I thought the solution to building a true business, was going to be a team. And I was like, okay, I quickly realized it's not a team. And when I say a true business, meaning that I don't look at, you don't have a business if you can't step away for a year and have this thing running. Like if it doesn't create true, residual / passive income, like you don't have a business, in my opinion. So I thought there was going to be a team path. Took me about a decade to realize that isn't the path. So then I'm like, oh, I'm going to go the brokerage path. Right? Still running the team, but then launching the brokerage side. But then you realize with the brokerage is like every time we launch a location, it's like just adding another jail cell. So it took me about 2 decades to realize that neither of those were the true path, or the vehicle for what I was truly looking for. Which is to create a business that pays me the income that I want, that allows me to do what I want, when I want, where I want. If I'm going to invest 2 decades of my life into something, like that damn thing better reciprocate and give back to me at a high level. We give way too much blood, sweat, tears, sacrifice into things without it reciprocating properly. And that's eventually what led me into joining EXP.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Like, how many agents do you think truly have, what percentage truly have a business?
I mean, 0.01.
I agree. And it is crazy. There's so many times we just miss the big picture. I never wanted to be that agent that dies on the front porch trying to show a house. So it was always trying to use real estate as a vehicle to create multiple streams of income, right? So the agents that are listening to this right now, maybe they have a team, maybe they want to start a team, maybe they have a small team or large team. What kind of advice would you give them? Like, what kind of team do I want? Because not everybody wants to think as big as Joshua Smith.
Yeah, and this is where, like I was talking about earlier with clarity, okay, the way that I look at this is you got to know the mountain is that you're going to climb, right? So what do you want out of this thing? So let's just say I'm going to develop a team, okay? Let's just say 5 or 10 years from now, you build it and you've got it built. What is that team giving back to you? What does your life look like? Once it's built, once it's created, what does your life look like? How much money you're making? What's your perfect day look like? What does freedom look like to you? Don't think about the business. Think about, because this business exists so we can live the life that we want. So I'm going to reverse engineer of, okay, that reciprocation piece is this thing better give me the life that I want. Right? Then from there, now that I know the mountain that I'm going to climb, because again, I've spent decades, realizing that got to the top of the mountain only to realize, shit, I climbed the wrong damn mountain. And then you got to hope that you have the endurance and, the drive to go scale the next mountain, right? Once you've identified the right mountain. So, find the right mountain. Because then from there, okay, you're at the bottom, you want to get to the top of the mountain. Well, then now we can identify what that strategy plan is to get from the bottom to the top. So an example, a dude that I've been coaching for a lot of years now, he comes to me and he's like, Josh, I tried the whole traditional team thing. I hated it. I was miserable. He goes, I just didn't enjoy that. I hate babysitting agents. It just wasn't for him. He's like, but I need leverage. And he goes, but I want to build a business. He goes, I don't need to be completely detached. He goes, I like still, doing the consult, like buyer consultation, listing presentation. He goes, but I want to build it more admin heavy, but I also want to build it in a way where my wife and I could take our kids and we could travel half the year. So I'm like, okay. So for him, the model that made the most sense was, to build out a showing agent model. But then, okay, does that get him to take his 22 vacations the next year? Built out that model. He's loving it. Well, then he falls in love with the Netherlands. So then he moves to the Netherlands, still running his real estate team in Florida, still doing, a few hundred home sales a year, but a different continent. Well, then, okay, now we had to adjust the model again. So for him, he does all the lead gen, lead follow. Well, we have kind of VAs helping, supporting heavily with that. But so essentially he does the listing presentations, the buyer presentations, all via Zoom, right? Then he has 8 full-time licensed kind of boots on the ground specialists that get salaries, that do all the, work in the ground. Then as soon as, let's just say, they find the home that they're looking for, his assistant does all the showings, he'll get re-involved for contract negotiations. Well, that makes sense for him. He runs very high margins. It's like an 85% margin team. He's able to allocate his time doing what he wants when he does it. The hours work great for me. He's very profitable, and allows him to do real estate in Florida on it from a different continent. So there's so many different models. What you got to ask yourself is, okay, what is the model that makes sense to get me from where I'm at to where it is that I want to go? And there might be, a combination of different models, but then, and sometimes it does take testing a couple of different models out, but yeah, I mean, once you have that clarity, then from there we can reverse engineer, what model makes the most sense. So for me, like with my real estate team, is like always, hey, I want to be able to disappear for 2 years, and have my business running without my involvement. So I couldn't build the same model that he built because I wanted to get to the point where, I didn't have to work at all in my real estate business, and it took me about, 10 years to build that. And then, started building the next business and the next business and the next business. It doesn't mean I still wasn't involved a little bit, but, like I'd walk in the office, I didn't know if it was an agent or a client, and so I had to do a different model. So, that's what I would advise for identifying the right model.
And it sounds like that agent was very clear on what they like to do. They like to buy and, work with buyers and sellers still, which I know like me and you were like happy to, kind of let production go to building a bigger agent. So now, so you went from, from solo agent to team to brokerage. Now I know you got into coaching. Like, what was your next play?
Okay. Again, I always wanted to build a business. So here I am, 31 years old. And I went from working 80 hours a week to now I don't have any work on board, and I'm like, I'm not ready to like be done. Right. So I was like looking for the next project. So then I started looking at, okay, what am I good at? What do I enjoy doing? And where is their demand? Like how those three intersect. I'm like, that would make sense to then start a new business with that thing. So I'm okay to become a great team leader. Like you inevitably have to become a damn good coach, right? So it gets to a point where your ability of being a great real estate agent doesn't really matter as much. It's how good are you at inspiring and helping others to get into action. And so you have to become a good coach, right? And over the years, just because of my own production, and asking to be, speaking on stages, and I'm sure you get this all the time too with your level of success, but you just start getting agents reaching out to you, hey, will you coach me? And my whole thing was always no. Like I always looked at I loved running the gyms, but I hated being a personal trainer. I was like, dude, I showed you 12 times how to do the squat. I don't know why you can't do the damn squat. Right? Like, so I never thought I'd really enjoy, the coaching side of it so much. Plus I was always like, teachers teach, but, doers do, and I'm a doer. So I was getting reached out to, numerous times weekly from agents and team leaders from all over the country. Hey, will you coach me? No, I'm busy building, man. Sorry, right? So then I'm like, okay, there's demand for it. I got really good at it, or at least I believed I was really good at it, and I enjoyed it. So then I was like, okay, that's the next thing, right? So then I took on 40 one-on-one coaching clients, and at that time you had to do a minimum of 30 million a year because I didn't want to like coach new agents again and talk about the basics of like I really like high level conversation, systems, processes, scale. But then the issue with that, I realized, okay, I didn't enjoy that, right? I was like, dude, it didn't matter if you were an individual agent doing 30 million in your gross volume sales and ready to launch your team, or if you're doing 100 million, wanting to scale to 300 million. It's like, dude, everybody had the same problems. I felt like I was repeating myself because with 40 one-on-one coaching clients that you're speaking to on a weekly basis, it was like 8 hours a day. I just felt like I was like on this treadmill of a phone call, just repeating myself all day long. And it was a burnout activity for me. And then two, I was like, man, I got to charge these agents a lot to make it worth my time, but I'm like, man, everybody has the same issues. I think I can put this into like a group format, charge a hell of a lot less, scale this up. So then I launched my first 90-day mastery boot camp, which was just kind of a mastering every element of the business that you need to master to grow and scale business. It's like a G. It's like $1,000 for 90 days. All group is 3 hours of group coaching every single week, and then a mastermind group, and they'd have daily access to ask me questions. I didn't know how that was going to go. But then I was like, all right, dude, I'm gonna pre-market it for 30 days. And if I can do 30 grand in coaching revenue in the next 30 days, I know I'm onto something. If I make a penny less than 30 grand, I'll refund everybody their money. I'll coach them for the 90 days for free, and I'll just go on to find a different, different strategy. $120,000 in sales in that 30 days. It took me, like a decade to make that kind of money in my real estate business. And I'm like, shit, I did this in 30 days and I didn't have the product built yet. I pre-sold it. Now I knew in my head exactly what it was going to be, but then I'm like, man, I know I'm onto something. So then I went for about a decade doing variations of the group coaching. Because again, you can do it where it's so much more affordable, it's more scalable, help more people. Because what's interesting about this industry is when agents really need the help, they don't have the money. And then when you have all the money, you don't necessarily need the help as much, So I really enjoyed that, right? That was, the most fun that I had in the coaching aspect, But then again, the problem with the coaching, this didn't hit me until I'm in my early 40s. And I'm like, for the first time ever, I started having, before that, I kind of thought I was like invincible. And nothing happened in my life, other than just thoughts started in my head of, what happens if I jump on the freeway tonight and I get taken out by a semi? I'm like, yeah, we got some life insurance, we got some assets. It's like my family's without, but I'm like, okay, not only are they without their husband and father, but then, finances aren't going to be necessarily the same. Like they'll have enough to get by, but it's not going to be, so then I'm like, because I realized that every business I had created, even though like day to day wasn't relying on me, like it wasn't going to outlast me. Like there was nobody to take over these companies, run them without, especially the coaching. Now coaching was phenomenal. I mean, I did like $20 million in top line revenue in 10 years with coaching. I mean, it was a great business. Now it's top line revenue. I didn't net 20 million over that, time period. But like with coaching, dude, like you are the business. So I'm like, all right, dude, like I gotta figure out something else here, right? Where I can do the same thing, have the same impact, but I'm building a true business, leave something, beyond me, to my family. So then that kind of led into, again, the brokerage side, but quickly realized that wasn't the right vehicle and to what I'm doing now. So now that I'm at EXP, I just wrapped up all my coaching, everything into, hey, the only way you can get my coaching is to, partner with me at EXP, partner with our co-sponsor. So just doing it in a different way under a different vehicle, but still I just coach all day long.
So you found what you love to do and you saw where the model that you currently have wasn't working and that you found this new platform through EXP that can truly scale what you were doing. So what made you make the big leap to EXP?
Yeah, so there's three things that I see going on overall that caused me to make this move. And I will say, I think one thing that I've done a good job at, now I could be wrong on these three things, but one thing I think I've done a good job at is, it's the whole Wayne Gretzky quote of, skate to where the puck is, you skate to where it's going. So like, again, I mean, even when 2022, the market shifted and changed, like we timed that out perfectly, not because I'm some savant, but it's like, okay, if you just pay attention, like, the moves that are taking place, you can be proactive, you can set yourself up, plan accordingly and be good to go, right? So the three things that I started seeing that we're still amongst right now, number one is the global debt crisis that we have going on. It's a magnitudes of scale of size of anything that's ever been experienced in recorded history before. I don't know of any easy way out of this. And not just government, US government debt, but we're talking corporate debt, the derivatives market. Dude, everything is this massive Ponzi scheme. It's a mathematical impossibility for this debt to be paid back. I don't know how this is going to end. And I don't think anybody does. A few people might, but I definitely don't. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to navigate this, and shit's gonna get ugly, much uglier before it gets better. It's gonna get funky and weird, and we got deglobalization happening for the first time since the collapse of the Roman Empire. I'm like, okay, there's some shit moves, right on that, that are gonna be gnarly. Number two, we got AI. Going to be some crazy gnarly changes with AI. Number three, we got this lawsuit era that we're amongst. So we had the Sitzer Burnett case that we're all familiar with, the $1 billion settlement. Right now we got the buy-side settlement. A lot of big players, it's not getting the same publicity, but a lot of big players have already been settling for 30, 40, 50 million. Then we have the whole RESPA that are next in line, then the referrals, and the DOJ has been very public that they do not like the NAR class action lawsuit settlement. They're going to reopen it in 3 years as soon as that's up. They want us to be more like New Zealand where it's true decoupling, so, and look, I've had friends that got hit with $10+ million settlements for nothing they did wrong, nothing their agents did wrong, just because of these stupid class action lawsuits, right? So then I'm like, okay, with these three things, I had to ask myself, okay, do I have the intelligence? Do I have the ability to navigate through these alone? Or does it make sense for me to partner with a winning team that has deeper pockets, more resources, and more intelligence? Because look, the reality is Glenn Sanford is much more intelligent than me. He's a much better operator, much better business owner than me. To my knowledge base, we've been in the industry about the same amount of time. One of us is a billionaire, one of us is not. Right? Like, people will come to me like, oh, Josh, you don't give yourself enough credit. I'm like, dude, just look at the facts. Yeah, I've been able to build some nice things and build some, compared to others, maybe I've done okay, I've done well, but there's levels to this stuff. And you just got to understand, like you gotta pick the game you can play. Okay, like I'm 5 foot, 10 and a half. Like I didn't pick going into the NBA as a game I can play. Right? Like what are the games that you can excel at, that you can play, that you can be victorious at, that you enjoy? All those things are important. So then from there, because of those, I started looking at, okay, I think it makes most sense. I can still, because for the longest time, my goal has been to build a 40,000 agent international real estate organization. And I was trying to do it, independent, but okay, realize again for the, what we're coming up against, plus our growth rate was way too slow to even, it's going to take me a lifetime to get there. So then I started looking at, okay, what is there a model? There's got to be something else out there that exists that I can plug into, build what I want to build within it, but have no risk, have no exposure, allocate my time more strategically. That's going to allow me to win. So for the first time ever, I started looking at EXP. I started looking at, became very evident to me that there was two models I could do this under, Real or EXP. Then after about, 30 days, it became evident there's only one model I can do this under, EXP. So for the first time ever, I started looking at it, because before EXP was just always a competitor. I never really gave them a thought. And I was talking with Rich Tomasini yesterday. I think you might know Rich, but I'm like, hey, dude, this is a game, like I knew I could win. Yeah, right? Because I get to plug into, I look at this at EXP for $85 a month. I get to leverage their 2,500 support staff. I have no risk, no exposure, very little to no headaches. I get to allocate all my time into the two things that actually grows my business, agent recruiting and coaching and training, and I have a global playground actively in 29 different countries that I can plug into.
You found this model, you're coaching, you're training, you can see how you can scale. So how did you figure out that EXP was the right model versus Real?
Yeah, so there was a few. Look, they're both amazing companies. Now, I've never been with Real, so I can't say what that exact experience is like there. But I have a lot of great friends, coaching clients that are there, and so and I didn't care what jersey I wore. Right? To me, like I think I talked more crap about EXP than any human being alive before I joined them. But again, they were always a competitor. Right? But for me, it was a few things, right? So number one, now this was, because I've been at EXP now for about 16 months. So this was during my due diligence time. Things may have changed between now and then, but at least at that time, I'm looking at this. So number one, I looked at financials. I'm like, okay, if I'm going to abandon or exit from something that I've been spending, really 2 decades building, and put all my time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears into building something under somebody else's umbrella, like I got to make sure they're going to be here for the long haul. So when I started looking at the financials, okay, EXP, only publicly traded real estate company, have 16 straight quarters of profitability, 100% debt free, multi-billion-dollar market cap, 150 million liquid in the bank. Then I was looking at Real at the time, and at that time, last year, they'd lost 28 million. They were yet to be profitable. Now, in all fairness to Real, EXP, when they were at that same size, they were losing money as well. But then I looked at this, and I'm like, and look, I know, I'm sure Real's going to make it. I want them to make it. Like I said, I have so many great friends there. But the difference, and this is just where my mind's going. I'm not telling anybody this is fact. This is just, walking through how my mind was, how I thought through this was, the difference was, okay, EXP was the pioneer in this space. We didn't have the headwinds that Real's against. Real has to compete against EXP, LPT, Fathom, Epic. They have all these out. Like we were the pioneers, so we didn't have the same headwinds and the same challenges that they're gonna be facing. So number one was financials. Number two, which was these other couple next reasons were even more important than that to me, was okay. I get told when I'm having conversation with Real, okay, Josh, you cannot offer your coaching to anybody in your organization. You either have to offer to the whole company, or you can't offer it at all. So I looked at that. I'm like, okay, number one, you've taken away now my unique selling proposition. Why would somebody join me versus their friend? So you're essentially going to make it an impossibility for me to accomplish my organization size goal. Because I'm going to 40,000 agents. That already exists in my head or exists in reality. It's just a matter of, when I've given myself a 10-year target. I don't care if it takes 10 years, 20 years, 5 years. Like I'm going to, as long as, God doesn't take me prematurely off this planet, I'm going to hit that target. But I'm like, okay, now you're blocking me from doing that. And the reason is they don't want to have silos, because EXP is very siloed, meaning that a big part of your experience differs based on who the sponsor is and who the organization that you join with. They don't want that. They want everybody to have the same experience, right? So I looked at that as twofold, right? Number one, you're blocking me from again, my USP. So now I have, like, again, there's no incentive for somebody to join me versus anybody else. Number two, okay, if I have something that can greatly impact a real estate agent's, business and life, but you're telling me I can't offer it to them because of a perceived reputation that you're worried about, that shows me that you don't really truly care about your agents. So, and I know real agents get pissed if I say it, but that's just the way I interpreted it, right? That to me, I'm not okay with that.
What I compare it to is like if you went to a listing appointment and their seller's like, what would you do differently? And you're like, oh, well, offer you this, but I can't offer you any more than any of the other agents are offering you.
Yeah, exactly, right? So then from there, and again, this is a decision leadership level. I've got people I really care about that I love that are part of that company, and but that's not something that they're in control over, right? So, and again, this was just a strategic business decision for me. Then the next thing was, okay, in order for you to receive your full rev share, I'm told that you got to maintain a minimum amount of production. When I was making this move, I'm like, for the first time ever, or in at least 18 years, I'm gonna have one singular focus. So I'm like, I exited from everything. I'm like, I'm just going all in on this one thing. I don't plan on ever selling another piece of real estate again. So I'm like, now you've, blocked this model, but then, okay, I know most are in production, but they're building up the revenue share piece for that future retirement. Well, I'm like, you just defeated the purpose of making this a retirement plan, So, and there's some other factors, but those were the primary biggies, and then I started looking at, okay, EXP's 29 countries, goals to be in 100 countries within the next 10 years. So just looking at it from a growth possibility standpoint, and then just when I looked at the leadership team, I was just much more impressed and blown away by EXP's leadership team, the shared vision, the speed they all operate by. Now with this, I'm biased because I've known Leo Perea. He's been a very close friend of mine since about 2011. We won the 30 under 30 together. This is when he was, his Keller Williams days, when he was the number one team leader at KW. I was one of the top team leaders at RE/MAX, number one in the state with RE/MAX at the time. And, we just clicked. And I watched Leo build the number one KW team in the world, exit from that. Then I watched him build the number one private lending practice in the East Coast, had a great exit from that. Then I saw him build and develop Remine, have a great exit from that. So Leo is the most brilliant guy in real estate I've ever met. He's always been just 10 steps, 10 levels ahead of all of us. When I say all of us in my inner circle, right? Like our inner circle, right? There's a lot of people I haven't met in this industry that I'm sure are, equally as brilliant. But for me, Leo's the most brilliant dude in real estate I've ever met. He's never not accomplished one thing he's told me he's going to do, So then I'm like, hey, man, like this guy, you got Glenn Sanford, the brilliant genius that created this model. And now you got Leo Perea, leading the ship. And I'm like, dude, let's go. This is where I'm meant to be.
Oh my God, totally agree. Leo is brilliant. And I totally agree with you on the entire EXP leadership team. They do so much to, where we're involved. I had Glenn Sanford in my office a few months back, and he for an hour just spoke, So you join EXP, obviously of zero, and fast forward to today, 16 months later, where are you at?
So I had one that I onboarded since we've been on this call. So let me pull this up because I might have had two. 652 agents that I brought in 16 months.
So 652 in 16 months. What would you say the things that you did that help you get there so fast? I know a lot of agents have been trying for years. I've personally been here 8 years and I have just as much as you. So what did you do to grow your organization so fast?
Yeah, so, first off is understanding that this is a game of duplication. So I knew that right out of the gate, if I didn't have replicatable, duplicatable strategies that even new agents could plug into, then I was never going to be able to scale this. Because again, my whole thing is 40,000, right? So I need to be bringing on 11, net gain a day, right? So we'll see what my churn rates end up being, long term. But so I knew it's I got to create scalability. So initially I was like, hey, I can't tap into anybody that I know, warm audiences. So I was like, I got to recruit my first 200 agents, all cold strategies, go after cold agents. Because if I can't hone this in and have, again, easy to follow, replicatable, duplicatable strategies that even new agents in my organization that want to focus on rev share and want that residual income and want to essentially build a brokerage side of a brokerage, if they can't, I was like, okay, yeah, I could plug in and start leveraging my podcast. How many people are going to spend a decade building a podcast? Probably zero, maybe three, right? So that's what I obsessed over and focused over. And what's funny is, so it took me, I don't know, maybe six months ish to get to my first 200, maybe a little bit less time than that. But what's funny is then when I started incorporating my warm strategies, I realized, shit, that recruits me. I get about zero from that anyway. I think I've got about a dozen agents from like past coaching clients, podcast. The assumption is, oh, Josh, you got this name in the industry, you got this podcast, you got all these agents just coming to you. I'm like, I wished. No, I'm at it all day, every day. I've got, like 6 recruiting calls a day will be a slow day for me. A busy day will be about 9. That's about my capacity. But all day, every day, man, I'm hunting, right? Like I'm a hunter. And I looked at this and just, again, I don't need to recreate the wheel. So first thing I started doing is studying guys like Eric Worre and, like the best, MLM organization builders. Because I know we're not an MLM or real estate company, but if you chunk down rev share, structured exactly like an MLM, right? So then I'm like, and I've never been a part of an MLM. So even before I joined EXP, I knew I was going to, I just had to exit from all this other shit. So I had a couple month period of time while I was waiting to be able to, get the green light to fully join. So I just started studying the shit out of like Eric Worre's GoPro and Brian Carruthers building an empire and listening to every MLM podcast and, reaching out to other MLM builders that built amazing, 8-figure annual, downlines in like perfume and health and fitness and beauty spaces. And, so like, hey, like if I'm going to play a game, I got to know the game I'm playing, right? Then the first thing I did when I joined EXP is I got a hold of, hey, here's the top 100 in the company. Let me do everything I can to get on a call with them, pick their brain, see what they did, what they're doing, things they wish they would have done differently, but then what I discovered with that is, okay, like so many have this, and I had this perception too. I'm like, oh man, all these big influencers are going to have these big downlines, and the EXP being a publicly traded company and everything being transparent, you see everybody's numbers. I'm like, dude, all the people that I thought would have huge downlines didn't have huge downlines. And then the people with huge downlines, I'm like, I never even heard of this motherfucker. I never heard of them. Right? I'm like, they got no name in the industry, right? Outside of maybe in the EXP ecosystem, people might know them, but like I never heard of like, Elizabeth Riley or
Oh, I love her.
Yeah, she's a rock star, dude. Right? But like out of the and maybe it's just if I was in Austin, I would have. But or Brent Gove, I never heard of that dude. Right?
So funny.
But anyway, so I started looking at this, and I started looking at the different strategies and how people scaled. And I just knew that, okay, scaling through my pod, like doing the attraction based is never going to get me to where I want to be. Now it's great for some, like, hey, if you want to, over a decade period of time, get to 1,000 agents, making 50,000 a month residual income for the rest of your life, yeah, that path can get you there. But to get to 40,000 in 10 years, I got to go way faster. So I got to play offense. I got to hunt. So what I found that's best for me is identify it's just like going after buyers and sellers. And I always get a kick out of when agents are like, oh, I don't want to recruit. I just want to go to buyers. I mean, you are recruiting. You're either recruiting buyers, sellers, or agents. The only difference between agents versus buyers and sellers is agents, you get paid many, many, many times, right? Kind of get paid indefinitely as long as they stay with the company. So it's a more strategic leverage piece. And recruiting agents is easier than recruiting buyers and sellers. But it's okay. Like, what's your ideal client? And then what's the strategy that makes sense for them? So I have 4 ideal clients. And then 3 strategies that I implement. So number 1 is seasoned individual agents doing 20 plus transactions a year that are with legacy brokerages. So like your Remax, KW, Sotheby's, Cool Banker, Century 21. I mean, all your big names that we've all heard of forever. Why do I go after them? In almost every scenario situation, I can articulate very quickly and show them you're going to save 15 grand a year plus by being here. You're going to have superior systems, tools, technology, support, training, coaching, mentorship. And now you have these 2 wealth building vehicles through stock and rev share that you never had before. It's like, it's a no brainer. So it's a path of least resistance, plus they're quick cappers, right? And if somebody's doing 20 deals a year in this market, like, I can get them to 40 fast, right? I can get them iconing fast, right? So we know we're going to get, full rev share, plus the math makes sense. It all just adds up and makes sense. And I call those my soldiers, right? Because you got your soldiers and you got your generals. So thinking of your soldiers is, producers that are going to contribute to rev share, but they don't really care about building, but then the true growth is through identifying your generals, right? So who are those? Because how do I get to 40,000? Okay, I can try to recruit 40,000 agents, or I can identify and then partner with and help build and develop 40 future alphas. Right, and those of you that don't know what an alpha means, that's 1,000 plus agents in your organization at EXP. So I'm on the hunt every day for who are my 40 alphas. I got 3 of them so far that aren't alphas yet, but will be, that like I know will be, right? And they're just, doing big, doing all the right things. So I got 3 already that are with me. Now I got 37 more that I got to find, So then, okay, who are those, And I thought at first it was going to be team leaders would be one, but at least so far for me that hasn't, shaked out. Because I think the hard part about, now teams are great. I love going after team leaders. And the reason why this model works so great for teams is because you have the built-in ascension plan. Because as you know, agents leave, but as long as they stay at EXP now, I can continue mentoring them and coaching them and helping them build their own team. And, it's a massive win for teams. But I think, for a lot of successful team leaders, you're making such good money right now. It's hard to take away focus from that to where, rev share is a slow game, right? Well, I mean, it's been fast for me, but, so when I say fast, it can go fast, but to get them to, hey, I'm making 70 G's a month, every single month net on my team. Why am I allocating this where I'm making a couple $100 of each deal for this year, right? So, I found it a little bit more challenging, more than I thought, than I anticipated to get them to focus on rev share. But I go after, so individual agents, 20 plus transactions, seasoned agents, legacy brokerages, team leaders, independent brokerage owners, and then other coaches and influencers. Because this is just a better, more intelligent model to run coaching under. You don't have to deal with chargebacks. Once somebody's got what they need out of your coaching, they're going to stop. Now you can continue to residually get paid, So how I go after individual agents is, dude, I just text all day long, text and DM. So whether it be through LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, if I can connect with them, I won't DM them if we're not connected. But like if I send them a connection request, we will, get connected. Like I DM them. If not, I'm texting them, and that is a bottom line up front. Right? Hey, I know you're probably happy where you're at, but if you're open to it, because I think we could do amazing things together. Love to schedule a quick 30-minute Zoom call where we can discuss a partnership. So I just go right into it. For team leaders, broker owners, and coaches and influencers, I have a slightly different strategy. I found that I tried that, but it just wasn't able to get anybody's attention. So I just go in with a mastermind. And that would just be something like, hey, Jennifer, see you doing amazing things with your real estate team. Congrats on all your success. Not sure if you're open to it or not, but I'd love to just schedule a 60-minute Zoom mastermind where we can pop on. I think we could learn a lot from each other. I'll give some context to them about me and my success and journey. And I'll just share with them, hey, I'm an open book. Nothing I won't, share with you. I think we can learn a lot from each other. Would you be down to mastermind? I don't have anybody ever tell me no. I just make sure on that mastermind that I bring way more value and I'm pouring way more into them and I'm helping them more than they are me. So then now after 2, 3, interactions and I'm just giving, then it's like, hey, Jen, dude, I know you got an amazing thing going on where you're at and doing what you're doing, but I think we could do some amazing things together. Really been thinking about it a lot lately. I'm not sure if a partnership makes sense or not, but hey, would you be willing to just jump on a quick 30-minute Zoom call with me where I can walk you through what my thoughts are, what I'm thinking, and see if this might be a fit for each other? Now I've already built up that relationship and trust, and that's going, because I always look at this of, okay, getting one season top producing agent, let's just say they're doing 50 units a year. That takes me as much energy and effort as to get over. So like, Alan Kushmakov, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So I just brought over Alan, right? So he had 101 agents, 75 made the move with him. Well, that didn't take any more energy and time as a producing 50 deal. I mean, maybe a little bit, but now I got 75 agents and I know Alan's going to go to 10,000 agents, right? So, getting very clear on who your ideal client is, like who this model's good for, who does it strategic. So I'm not shotgunning, like I'm operating like a sniper. What are the strategies that make most sense to go after them, and then just execute like crazy. Like all day, like dude, between sets working out, I'm DMing, I'm texting, like all day long, dude. Like I probably bust out 50, 60, 70 messages a day. I started with 10 a day, but realized that wasn't a quick enough run rate. I did 10 a day, so I had 1,080 text messages sent my first 90 days. That ended up being just over 100 book Zoom calls, 74 recruits. But I realized I got to go faster. So then I just, I'm just, anytime I'm between meetings, anything, I'm just messaging for opportunities. And I get, if right now I'm at about 30 messages sent to get one book call. So I essentially got 29 others telling me to piss off or ignoring me. It's a game of rejection, but it's like, hey, that's okay.
Well, that's what real estate is.
Yeah.
I love to, like, recruiting gets a bad rap. It's like, oh God, you're just a recruiter. It literally is, you meet somebody, you like them. Cross-sell agent for you, you might have reached out, you add value, and you're like, hey, I think it would be cool to partner together. And it simply is that. It's like way less recruiting than listings are, because you're not just there to help them professionally. You're like, we can help change lives together. So I love how you've said that, because obviously you as a leader, you as a coach, I mean, you have changed so many lives.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And look, you guys, like, anybody's watching or listening, it doesn't need to be awkward either. Like, let's just say you're at a networking event, and you get to meet somebody, you're connecting with them, you're kind of, getting free, becoming a friend or whatever. If you position it in the right way, like, people won't take offense to it. If I'm just like, I don't know, whatever their name is, Sarah, or, but it's just, hey, look, I know you're probably really happy where you're currently at, but if you're open to it, because I think you could do amazing things over our brokerage, our organization. If you're open to it, I'd love to just jump on a quick 30-minute Zoom call, just so everything I do is zero pressure. So I'm not going to try to push you, pressure you, recruit you, none of that BS. I just want to walk you through everything that we do, how we work, how we operate, all the additional coaching, training, systems, support, mentorship that we provide to help ensure you accomplish your real estate goals. Answer any questions that you have. And look, at the end of the call, if you think it's a fit for you, great. And if not, that's okay too. I just think it'd be well worth your time to just jump on a quick 30-minute Zoom call. Is that something you'd be willing to do? Like, it doesn't need to be this, like, annoying. Like, dude, people want to be wanted.
Yeah, totally, right? It's like, if people aren't recruiting me, like, what's my problem? What am I not doing right?
Yeah, but that's the fear too, right? Because I got to a point where nobody was ever trying to recruit me. And I've had a lot of people come to me after I joined EXP, even close friends of mine that have been here for a long time. They're like, man, I dropped the ball. I just thought you would never make the move. They were, afraid for some reason to reach out to me. But I'm like, I had a couple people early on, but it had probably been 7-8 years since anybody had even attempted to have a conversation with me about joining EXP.
Yeah, it's like we tend to, we all have, right, overthink things. And you just have a way of putting it that is so easy. It's so simple. instead of like, having this long drawn out, like why everything doesn't work, like just, hey, this is as easy as it is. Like, that script is so easy for anyone listening to this to be able to call somebody. You don't have to have this big long pitch. It's like really as simple as how you've laid it out. So, well, what's next for Josh Smith?
This is it, man. I am just, for the first time, like I mentioned, in a long time, a mentor of mine. This was probably 6 months before I made the final decision to make this new move on this new journey with EXP. So a mentor of mine said this cliche saying that we've all heard a million times, but it's just right time, right place. The teacher appears when the student's ready. But said, hey, it's an impossibility to fail at anything and not succeed at something if you truly give it your all. So I pull out this blank sheet of paper, and I'm looking at this, and just, these at business, right? And I wanted to write out areas of business that I've truly given it my all. I looked at that damn blank piece of paper for like 20 minutes, and then I was like, why not? Like, I know I'm not full of shit when I say I want these things. Like, why? I mean, I've given a lot, but have I given like my true all? And I couldn't answer that yes to that in any venture. And I was like, well, why not? Like, again, I know I'm not full of shit, and this was, I wasn't planning on sharing this story with anybody. This is just, like me and my own thoughts, and I'm like, well, man, I have my real estate team. I got the brokerage. I got my software company. I got my coaching company, a couple business in the health and fitness space. I'm like, this business gets 10% of me. This one gets 30%. This one gets, so I'm like, dude, I'm spread so thin. I can't give anything 100%. And look, again, knowing my limits, I'm like, I'm not Elon Musk. I don't know how the dude does it. Like when I've shined the most in my life is when I've had one singular focus. So I'm like, I'm going to just consolidate everything into one singular focus, do one thing, but then from there, I'm like, hey, how do I test myself? Right? And that's where it kind of led to this. I started looking at, okay, who's the biggest with EXP, and how long did it take them to build it? Okay, I'm just going to double that in the same time frame. And it's not an ego thing. It's not like I don't care about like, for me, it was just, I want to, for the first time ever in my business life, test myself and have a test where I know if I accomplish this, I truly had to give something my all. So for me, it's one singular focus, just this, no distractions, just at it every single day. And I'm blessed because I also love what I do. It's like, it's the most fun I've ever had, right? Like, people are like, oh, you work so much. I'm like, yeah, none of this feels like work. I got to hang out with awesome people like you all day. Like, it's just fun, right? Like, I got to talk with people about shit I love, building their business, and I just love masterminding all this shit. Like, it's just, to me, it's just fun.
Well, you told me that about the blank paper exercise. Like, I don't know, was it like 6 months ago or something like that? So I did the same thing, and I was like looking at like areas I thought I was giving a lot more to, and then your voice popped in my head, and I was like, well, Joshua Smith wasn't giving it his all. Like, can I really say yes? And it really did have a big impact on me. So thank you for that, you guys. If you haven't done that, if you can have one takeaway from this podcast, that blank paper exercise is like so, I don't know, refreshing, that we have clarity. So awesome. Joshua, I am so excited that you're here now, my like second guest here on the podcast. Where can everyone find you?
Yeah, the best place is probably just like YouTube. You can just go Google Joshua Smith GSD mode. But YouTube's probably the best place just because I jumped on YouTube early, like 2012, so I think I have like 3,000 free videos out there. Interviews. You've been on my podcast a bunch. It's all free content. I don't sell anything anymore, right? So maybe if you get into the old podcast, you might see some promos for stuff, but just a ton of great free information that I think can support anybody that's watching or listening to this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for everyone listening. I hope you had at least one takeaway. Build big, and we'll see you on the next one. Namaste.